Knocked out the safety.
Let's all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic with which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for joining today's October 22nd Board of Directors meeting. Paul, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you for the roll, certification of quorum, proof of notice.
So we have Joel Mulcahy, Uwe Rober, George Custis, Nathaniel Monks, Ryan McAdon, Jim Carter, and Matt Barger present. So we have a full quorum for the meeting to proceed, and notice was posted in accordance with Florida statute.
Okay, we have approval of prior meeting minutes. As the board had an opportunity to review all the, I think we had two that went out.
Three, actually, yeah. So the August meeting minutes were not available at last month's meeting. So I had the board approve those via email, so we can get those posted on the website. So I just need those 2 minutes ratified, that the approval was made on the email.
So moved to ratify.
Okay, great. Now we need approval to approve last month's meeting minutes, September.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, so approved. Okay, let's jump into the agenda. First, I'll give a brief president's report. First of all, I want to thank everybody for joining us today. Also want to thank the board members for accommodating me with moving the board meeting today rather than Thursday. I have two weddings to attend in Arizona and California. The first one is next Saturday, where I'm the father of the bride and have an early morning flight tomorrow. Return on November 3rd. My daughter Morgan also thanks the board and the community. Since last meeting, we all survived two major hurricanes, Helene and Milton. Fortunately, Pelican Marsh did not have much of an impact other than loss of power for 1 to 5 days or so. Fortunately, I was one of the depending on where you live. For those of you that were here, it was nice to see the folks in the community helping each other out. The community center was open. Paul was here. Thanks, Paul, for all your support during the hurricane. We restored the power. Once the power was restored, we could see people coming in, powering their phones, computers, and other devices. It was really great to see the sense of community here. And we should all be very grateful for the great place we live and the community we're part of. The season is upon us. It's nice to see all our friends from the north arriving daily. It's always wonderful to reacquaint as our seasonal friends join us for the fall and winter season. We're looking forward to our annual welcome back party that's going to happen on November 4th. We hope to see many of you at Courtside for this upcoming event. Courtside had music throughout the summer on Thursday evenings. Residents are now gathering for NFL football on Sundays at the restaurant. We look forward to seeing you all around the community center, the courts, and Courtside as you return to our little paradise here in Naples. Our summer projects are nearing completion with the addition of the 6 new pickleball courts, the landscaping around the community center and pro shop. Roof on the pergola has been installed next to the bocce courts. Bushes have been removed adjacent to court 6, and the pavers will be installed over the coming weeks. Finally, you'll also notice that we have the couches in and around the fire pit area near Courtside. The Adirondack chairs should be here later this week, and the fire pit should arrive around late November, early December. In addition to the upcoming welcome back party, there are many activities around the community center that you can participate in. In fact, coming this Saturday, there's a Susan G. Komen 2-mile walk for breast cancer. If you have not signed up, I'm sure there's still room to participate. Even if you can't do the walk, you can donate to this fundraiser and join the fight against breast cancer. As wonderful as our community is, occasionally we have incidents that require our diligence and attention to maintain the safety and security of our residents. Following the hurricane, we had a brief incident around the tennis courts between a couple of residents. Without getting into the names or the parties involved, the couple took it upon themselves to ask the other residents to leave the courts. Although the residents that confronted the father and son playing on the courts felt they were protecting our courts and our amenities here, there was no harm to the courts. Words were exchanged. Both parties brought the incident to the board. And there's always two sides of the story, and it's not us to be judge and jury in these type of incidences. However, what we learned from this incident is to communicate with the community that if you see something that doesn't seem right to you, you should not take things into your own hands. The correct action is to report the incident to the general manager, Paul, or the respective director. In this case, it would have been Johan, or members of the board. We should not have residents attempting to police other residents. There have been other incidents reported at night around the campus, likely by young kids. So the board will be taking measures to increase security cameras, lighting around the community center and the courts. Hopefully this will deter this type of behavior and protect our community better in the future. The Finance Committee and the board have met in separate meetings this past couple of weeks. I just want to thank all the members of the board, Paul, our Finance Committee, for all their hard work pulling together the proposed budget for 2025. We'll cover the proposed budget later in the agenda. And then finally, the CDD is looking into the possibility of just removing the existing 41 gatehouse where the foundation would not have to be raised 2 feet to comply with the new FEMA guidelines required with the new construction. The idea will have to be vetted with the engineering to see if this is possible. And I recommend that the board send a letter to the CDD stating our support of this idea, as it will save a lot of money and significantly reduce the time the gate would have to be shut down. That's it for my president's report. Paul, I'll turn it over to you for the manager report.
Yep. So the start of the season is just a few weeks away. We've already seen activity around the community center pick up, with residents already returning from the northern habitats. The weather has also finally cooled down, where we can start enjoying more activities outside throughout the day, including court sports. Courtside is now going to be able to open up the dining patio outside in the courtyard. As Joe mentioned, we're working on our projects such as installing a fire pit with seating, upgrading the landscaping, and installing shading for the back patio next to bocce courts. The goal is to have all these projects completed by the end of this year, so they can be utilized and enjoyed during the height of our season, which is January through April. Just a reminder, Election Day is coming up on Tuesday, November 5th, and the community center is the voting precinct for Pelican Marsh. Word on the street is that this will be an active election, with many coming out to vote. So please be careful that day and watch out for others when entering and exiting the parking lot here that day. For those returning from the north, just be aware that the rains and humid weather over the summer may have caused buildup of dirt and mildew on your homes, roof, walls, and other surfaces. So please make sure you schedule any cleaning or maintenance that is needed for your home. The October brief is now out, and in this brief, it includes an official notice that the board will be voting to adopt a resolution to authorize electronic voting at the November board meeting. Once approved, to authorize electronic voting, members will be sent notice of the procedure to do this, and members can then opt in to sign up for electronic voting for all Pelican Marsh matters. Members who do not sign up and opt in for electronic voting will then just receive the standard hard copy material through the mail. That's why we're going to encourage all members, once this becomes available, to sign up for the electronic voting, because this is going to save the foundation thousands of dollars in mailing and printing cost. So we encourage you to sign up when it comes available. There are still some members out there who have not registered for the Pelican Marsh website and or downloaded the app on their phone. So we're still encouraging all members to do this, as this is the best way to stay connected and keep updated with what's happening in Pelican Marsh. And if you need help getting registered, just please contact the admin office staff, and they'll be happy to assist you in getting signed up and registered. That's my report. Any questions?
Okay, thank you, Paul. Nathaniel, I'll turn it over to you for the treasurer's report.
Hi, everybody. While Paul is pulling that up on the screen, I'm going to bring you up to speed on the treasurer's report. Normally, every month, I give you a treasurer's report, an in-depth one that brings us year to date on our numbers. Today, I'm not going to do that. Today, I'm just going to do an overview of it for two reasons. One, the rest of the treasurer's report will be posted online at pelicanmarsh.com. You can read it later. But here in a few minutes, I'm going to have to go over the entire budget for next year. And we've learned over time that if I talk for a long time, everybody in the audience goes completely asleep. So I'm just going to give you the short version so that you'll be awake for the budget. So we're just going to go over this one page, but next month we'll catch back up. Everything will be brought, when I do my treasury report next month, it'll be year to date, so you won't have actually missed anything. Okay, so looking at our overview page for year to date, this is for the first 9 months. Our operating surplus in September, through September, was $14,000 better than budget, mostly because of the fitness and court sports and interest income are all higher than budget. Fitness, court sports, and interest all doing really good. Our revenues were $22,000 better than budget, mostly to higher, this is for operating, higher interest income. We actually earned so far this year, $71,000 in interest. 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, we had earned almost zero in interest. And then whenever we had this little explosion in interest rates, our finance committee pushed us hard to invest all that money that was sitting in our bank all year. And now we have this extra money coming in. Thank God for the finance committee. The operating expenses were over budget. The main reasons for the over budget thing I've complained about is this terrible insurance premium we're paying because our roof failed the inspection. We got bad insurance policy at a high price. That was a big part of it. Also, we've had several things break this year due to lightning or surges in electricity. And even one lightning strike that came through around our electric and came through like an antenna line or something. And we've had to spend money on that. So that was over. Also, we've had a lot of credit card fees over our normal expected fees because we're doing so well in fitness and court sports. We didn't anticipate this many credit card fees. So anyway, it's not that bad. All these are the over budget stuff is really kind of temporary one-timers. So I'm not worried about that. Payroll was on budget, benefits were on budget, activity centers were better than budget. Food and beverage, our restaurant, is actually doing better than last year. And so the important things, the long-term things, all look good. You look down at the bottom where it says reserves and capital. Our resale fees are better than budget. Of course, we have to admit that when we make a budget for resale fees, we're kind of like shooting in the dark, but it's better than we expected. So far, it's $450,000, which is $52,000 more than we budgeted. Our replacement fund was fully funded early in the year. That's really good. $296,000. All those resale fees went into there, and then the rest of it after that went into capital improvement fund. And as I mentioned before, me, Paul, and these documents are online also if you have any questions. Thank you, guys. I'll give you a better report more in-depth report next month.
Okay, thank you, Nathaniel. I've got to jump into the new business. We've had an opportunity to sort of review the lessons and personal training in terms of looking at the market and where we've been, and we haven't made a change in the lesson fees over the last several years. Paul, I'm going to turn this over to you because we've done this analysis.
Yeah, so staff at court sports and staff at fitness came to me and said, we need to relook at our rates we charge for lessons and for personal training because we're not in line to market. And they showed me analysis of other area clubs like us and what they're charging, and we were under market. And so since we hadn't raised the rates in several years, we looked at it, we thought we need to be more competitive with the market. And to help out, especially some of the contractors, so they're being fairly compensated, raise our rates accordingly. So they have suggested for tennis that we need to raise our current rate of $90 an hour to $100 an hour. And over in fitness, to raise the personal training hourly rates from 80 to 90. And those would come more in line with what the market is today. So they're recommending the board approve these changes and increases in rates.
So before we turn it over for questions or comments from the community, want to see if we have any comments from the board.
Paul, there's a reference on the agenda of clinics increasing from $20 to $25 as well. I just didn't recall us discussing that. Is that also being proposed?
That is also being proposed. That's a flat rate. So they're $20 for the clinic, it's now $5 more. They would like that also increased.
And I believe, Paul, is my understanding, that puts us like in the middle of what communities charge. We're not the highest, we're not the lowest, but we're in a very comfortable middle position as far as our rate structures versus other communities offering the same service.
That's correct.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I think it's roughly a 10% increase. We've had pretty high inflation the last few years. And staff raises have been made over the last few years that were bigger than, 2-3%. And so I think over 3 years, it represents roughly 3% per year increase. It doesn't look unreasonable to me.
Any other board comments? Any questions or comments from the community? Residents? Okay,
The 25% increase on the clinics seems much larger than what this discussed.
I would like to comment on the clinics prices. I support the hourly fee prices for both the sports and for the personal training and for the massages, etc. On the clinics, an argument could be made that these clinics are more for the community, and still, even at the old rate, the pros would be getting paid more for a full clinic than they would an hourly rate. If they got paid $20 for 6 students, that would be more than the new rate. So I would entertain the idea of keeping the clinic prices at $20 per student and raising the individual lessons to $100. It does seem like that is more of a service for the owners in the community.
Paul, when you said you compared the rates to other communities, did you compare the clinic rates as well?
They did.
And 25 is closer to the average than 20?
Yeah, some are more, some are less, but again, we priced it to be right in the middle where the market's at. But again, this is just recommendation from the staff, the board we can.
Well, what's the average number of people in a clinic? 4 roughly, or more than that?
6.
I think it's either, well,
Max is 8. I
it's
think.
max is sort of 8. It's probably somewhere between 6 and 8. So for an
It's a
hour,
higher percentage. It's a higher percentage, you've got
Yeah.
$100, $90 to $100, 10%. As you said, it's a 25% increase, so.
I feel as if we've looked at the models and how this impacts overall compensation just based on the tennis lesson increase and the personal training increase, and not so much for the clinic side. I know I'm comfortable at this time approving the tennis lesson, personal training rates. I don't know if I'm comfortable without looking at some numbers, looking at the clinics. Maybe we put that aside for now.
one of the things that I would say is typically the, what is it? There's not so much a clinic, but they're 90-minute Saturday morning, it's, what is it? Cardio tennis. Those could either be an hour or they could be 90 minutes. And depending on if you go 90 minutes, it's $30. If you go an hour, it's 20 minutes. So I don't know. I'm listening to everybody and I sort of feel the same way. It seems like a bit of a jump. I'm all in favor of the lessons, but the clinic seems to be a little much.
We could postpone that discussion to next meeting on the lesson fees.
I don't think there's any reason to hold off on, we've had through the budget process, quite a bit of discussions on the tennis lessons and the personal training. I think if we feel comfortable with that, let's get that done, and then we could, come back to the clinics at a later time.
Right, I agree with you.
Yes,
One thing we always seem to forget here, when you compare it to the other communities, we have a unique situation here that most of our budget is satisfied by the resale fee. And that resale fee should really be a feedback and a presentation to the owners. Okay, so when you're raising the price of anything here to the owners, okay, it's not in comparison to other communities that need that money because it's part of their physical budget. The big difference. Okay, there was a thought process here at one time that all the debt was paid off. That we would use the resale fees instead of a major portion of our operating, okay, is we would have reduced fees, okay, overall, so that the community would have a better selling feature for the outside world. Okay, so you need to think about that. You match up these other communities, I'm willing to bet you, none of them have the existence of what we have here and we receive from resale fees, guaranteed. So you ought to take a look at that. The owners ought to be the beneficiaries of that, and not, the contractor. I hate to tell you.
That's a good thought, but I do want to point out that for the contractors, I want to switch back to the people giving massages, personal training and things like that. Those people give us a percentage of their income, and as we have kept their price the same, their other options have gone up. And if we want to keep the good providers, we want to give them a chance to make a little money. And then there is a benefit also to them making money as our percentage, the price of our percentage goes up, our 20% or 10% or whatever it is, that number of the value of that percentage goes up. So for those people, it is good for our community that we keep the price near market. And Jerry makes a good point on the other issues, definitely. Thank you, Jerry.
any other questions or comments from the board or the residents? Yes, Rich.
Just to kind of amplify on Rich Benson, my comments about the clinic, I think contractors are compensated, they're pros, they give lessons. We're going to increase that. I think that's great. You can compare that. The clinics are for people who are wanting to learn how to do things like tennis and pickleball and to get engaged in the community, the social aspects, to grow their skills, et cetera. So I think we should try very hard to keep that as affordable as possible. Now you can argue that $25 is nothing versus 20, but you could also, there's some elasticity there, and we're trying to benefit the community. So I think 20 does that more than 25. And I think the number of people in a clinic still allows the pro to make a fairly good profit per hour of his teaching time, because he could have 8 people in that. So I think if you look at it that way, now, if I were putting on my pro hat, I would like that, because the more people I get to take clinics, the more people get involved, and the more people then might want to take a lesson from me, or my profit margin is significantly higher. So I would encourage you to think about those comments and to make the change on the individual lessons, but I don't think the clinics need to be raised that much, maybe 5%, 10%, but certainly not 25%.
Thank you, Rich.
Nobody leaves, none of the contractors leave, they've all been here. This is the best job in the city.
Okay, I think we're at a point right now where we can,
Yeah, Joe,
So for a motion.
I'd like to motion that we increase the fees for tennis lessons from $90 an hour to $100 an hour, and personal training fees from $80 an hour to $90 an hour.
Seconded.
all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Nathaniel, I turn this over to you for 9.2.
Thank you. It's me again, guys. Now we're going to go over the 2025 proposed budget. For a little background, this budget has not yet been voted on by the board. It has been, the management made the budget, and the finance committee perused it and went over it line by line. And what you have here is the middle ground, is where the finance committee has given it their stamp of approval, the management's stamp of approval, and now it's time for the board to see if there's any changes that they would like to make, and then give it their stamp of approval. Now, what I'm going to show you several things. At the very top of it, you're going to see where it says 2024 budget. The bottom right below that, you'll see the 2016 dollars. That was your HOA fee last year. So last year, your HOA fee was $2,016. Now, if this budget, when I get through at the bottom of it, if nothing gets changed by the board today, it will be $2,135, which is 5.9% greater than last year. And I'm going to go through this with you line by line so that you understand all the things that are lower than and higher than last year and why. The variance is that little white block off to the right and just shows you the difference. All right, so let's start with there at the top. It's going to show your HOA fee, the assessments, the residents, the 2024 budget, 1.6 million. Switch all the way, and I'm going to keep switching back from the very left-hand column all the way to the yellow column. I'm going to switch over to the yellow column. You can see the 2025, 1.7 million. This is just this budget divided up between the 1,918 homes. Then the second line is interest revenue. Now, as I often mention, we have three different types of accounts. We have the operating budget, we have the reserve account, and we have the capital account. More on that later, but this right here is the interest revenue for the operating account. In 2024, we budgeted 62,000 for interest, which was really a windfall because it's always been much closer to $100. And now we went over that. We went over that by 11,000, and that's so far this year. So we're budgeting 62,000 again next year because, as you know, the Fed is cutting interest rates. We know the interest rates are going down. No one is predicting interest rates are going up. So we expect it to be lower next year. There's estoppel fees when people rent out their units and things like that. We get fees from that. We're budgeting 7,000 next year. Lease application fees, room rental fees, bocce fees. There are almost no variances from last year. Go to page 2, please. On page 2, we're going down to the general and administration. Now, I really like the column right to the right of the yellow column. If you look to the column right to the right of the yellow column, it's the column that keeps grabbing my eye, because what that is the difference between our budget this year and last year budget. And so the first one, when you see a 0 there, well, nothing's changed. I usually just scan right on down, like, well, that worked. Bank charges, we're budgeting less in bank charges next year than we did this year because, thanks to the Finance Committee, we've closed a bunch of bank accounts that we didn't really need and took that extra money and stuck it into the loaned it to the federal government so that they can pay us interest. Credit card fees, down next line down, that went up a lot. That hurts whenever something goes up a lot, but it went up for a lot for a good reason. We pay credit card fees every time somebody buys something, and when they buy something or a lesson or something, it has happened a lot lately. All our income in those categories have shot up, so credit card fees have went up along with them. BOD expenses, nothing, no change there. Copier expenses, things like that. Zip on down here to where it says payroll and benefits. You see it's 911,000. That's for our employees. We've got a bunch of employees here and some part-time employees. We budgeted last year 911,000. We're budgeting 970 for next year, a very small increase. If you read the newspaper, you know that wages go up, especially the last few years. 985. Okay, wait a minute. Mike, I am Paul. Do you have the call? I have yesterday's budget. I am reading off yesterday's budget. Paul, can I borrow today's copy of the budget? Oh, you don't have one? Okay. Oh, you know what? That's probably the only thing that changed. That's probably the only thing I'm going to circle that. Never mind. Though yesterday there was some budgeting in this line only. I had a finance committee meeting Friday here, and then yesterday we had a board meeting here, and each time we adjusted this a little bit. The rest of my copy will be the same as yesterday. Legal fees, $7,000 this year. We're going to assume there's a chance that we'll have a little bit more legal fees. There's some projects. And then you don't see much more when you get down. Okay, now I'm going to point out 2 lines, and then I'm going to ask for your permission to come back to these 2 lines at the bottom of this report. First, you're going to see capital funding. you'll see a bunch of blanks right in front of it. That means last year we did not have a capital funding line, and now it's 100,000. And then the line right below that, there was $50,000 last year, and now you see we have zero in it this year. That means that one is not happening at all this year. I want to come back to those two lines at the very bottom of my report because it's the only two lines that are slightly complicated. The rest of it's going to be easy to understand, such as coffee. As you know, we got tea and lemonade and things like that. So the coffee might be a little bit more expensive this year. So we budgeted a little extra just in case it is. Plus coffee got a little bit more expensive. Club software management. We've invested in this for a couple of years. I'm really hoping that this is the year that you start appreciating it. Club software management. Just this week, someone finally twisted my arm and slapped my head and forced me to load this thing on my phone. So now I have this software, the Pelican Marsh software on my phone, and by God, I like it. Now I can instantly see when I click on this thing on my phone, little pictures of all the events that are coming up. And today I went to a cooking class that was on my little phone. I clicked on it. I bought it all on my phone. I didn't have to come up here and pay. And I went to the cooking class for lunch, and it was great. And it's all because it's on this piece of software. I'm hoping that this piece of software will start making your life a little better. Please load it on your phone. It saves us labor because now you can pay for stuff just like you do on Amazon without coming up here and taking time of the employees. And so it saves time. This is also, you'll notice, is costing us less this year. Look at that. So this is because all the funding that we had to pay these guys to set up this and make it fit Pelican Marsh is now fully paid. So our club software went from 36,000 last year to 27 next year. This is a good thing. We know it can't go higher than that. Insurance, this is a squishy number. Last year we paid 130, we budgeted 135. And this year we're budgeting 123. We know that our insurance prices in Florida shot up or are shooting up. Everyone's saying, the experts are saying insurance is going to go up. We just had 2 hurricanes. That money is going to come from somewhere. So we expect the fees for insurance to go up, but we expect our fees to go down anyway because we got a brand new roof. So even though you see it going from 135 to 123, I've got my fingers crossed hoping for a number even smaller than 123, but it's going to be based on someone else's decision, not ours. The rest of that is pretty straightforward. We had some computer software maintenance that we've added in there also. Next page. Yes, sir.
Before you jump to the next page, can you explain to me why the reserve study went up from $1,000 to $4,500?
Good question.
Same kind of.
Good question. We do not get a reserve study every year. Years, we hire experts to give us a reserve study. What they do is they come to our business and they look at everything we own. They look at our financials and they see what would it cost to replace this roof? What would it cost to replace these tennis courts? What would it replace to cost the kitchen? And then they create for us a schedule. Okay, from now on, you guys need to put in this much every year, and next year it's going to go up to this much. And we're scheduling this year, you're going to get rid of you're going to pay for a new roof. 8 years from now, you're going to pay for a new tennis court. 9 years from now, you're going to redo your parking lot. And this is all laid out. And this is what we're going to do. Well, we are scheduling this for next year. We've been saving up for this, but we're actually going to pay for a brand new one next year because we feel like that, one, our reserve study is old. They gave us, the last time we bought a reserve study was back before inflation hit. And that was, everything got much more expensive in construction since then. So we expect our prices to all be antiquated, outdated. And so we think that the reserve study needs to be done so that we can start putting real numbers in there, because the last thing we want to do is to schedule something to be replaced in 18 years. And at the end of 18 years, find out there's half enough money in there or something. So we are paying extra money in 2025 to get a new company to come in and to give us a whole brand new study. So I do expect the amount of money that we put into the reserve account next year to be off budget, up or down, based on what these guys tell us next year. And so the finance committee has discussed this in depth, and the reserve account is fully funded. And we don't see anything coming in the near future, but we do want to have another set of experts, not the same people who gave us our last one, but a new set of people to go over that. Good question, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, building repairs and maintenance, all those things at the top three blocks you'll see are about the same. Janitorial services, this is one thing that we had to up a little bit because what we found last year, and I'm going to address this on several different line items, but since COVID, what we've had is a bunch of people sold their houses to younger people. We now have a bunch of new younger residents and they're more active than some of the people they replaced. And so now they're playing pickleball, going to the gym, coming to the community center. And this is good and bad. It's helped us with all these income and the different classifications, but it also muddies up the place. We had noticed that we could not keep this community center clean and could not keep the bathrooms clean during in season. It was just so darn busy. And so what we've done is we've budgeted for in season a little janitorial help. We have a full-time person that always does it year round and does a wonderful job. Everybody's happy, but we need to get more help in the in season only. So this is for a contractor company to come in and help us. There's really not much else on this page here. Even the utilities, you'll see water sewer for some reason went as we anticipated going down. So there's not much else on this page. It's
I have one more question.
yes, sir. Go ahead, Jim.
On carpet, tiles, et cetera, that you've budgeted a great deal more, went from 5 to 13.5. Now, are we reaching a point, is the maintenance of whatever we're cleaning to the point where we're better off to be replacing because of the frequency you have to clean a carpet? Where's the break even on it?
Finance committee asked Paul that, and he had a good answer. Paul, tell him what you told the finance committee about that.
The increased cost is more for the tile cleaning. I found through stretches this past year where we went a long time where the tile was really, and the grout was really dirty and for it and not presentable for our standards. So in order to keep our tile looking good throughout the year, we needed to up the cleaning and have it frequently clean more, to keep it nice and clean. So that's why I added 2 more times of them coming in to clean the grout and tile throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. So it's not, so really the carpet cleaning is staying similar to what it was, but it's really.
Well, I will
grout cleaning
say
is
the
big-
carpet also, where we typically, we had a professional company come in once a year and do it. I now have it twice a year.
Okay, and I think that's related to the heavier traffic that we're experiencing too also.
Correct. And unfortunately, the carpeting we have is very light, and so it dirties very easily. So in order for us to keep it looking presentable, we have carpet cleaners here we use internally to keep, spot clean. But in order to keep it more fresher and clean, we need a professional company now to come in twice a year.
Thank you. Good question, Jim.
Yes, thank you.
Next page. Okay, we're going into revenue. Fitness class, spinning class revenue. In a perfect world, we would also have a couple columns for 2022 or 2021 or something, so you can see how drastic this is. But 2024 budget, we budgeted 60,000, and we're doing the same thing for 2025. It looks like we're on target for that. Spa revenue, massage, that other long word that I can't say because I'm from Oklahoma. We've changed that just a tiny bit to 85,000. Personal training, it's jumping a lot, from 240 to 314, which is part of the reason the credit card fees are so high, is that personal training has went up a lot.
And Nathaniel, this
Yes,
is now
sir.
reflective of our rates that we just approved.
Oh, yes, this is a good point. Thank you, Brian. We just now, and we anticipated, because the board kind of all nodded in agreement, but without voting yet, that we all kind of felt like that we were going to pass this thing we just passed. So we just raised the fee for what the trainers in the gym and the massage givers, et cetera, are charging. So they're going to charge more. We get a percentage of what they charge, so our income is going up also, and that's part of the reason you're going to see this line look good. Down here, we have the fitness
Well,
expense.
excuse me.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, brother.
In anticipation of the budget, was that factored in that we were gonna pass the increase in fees?
Yes, since I'm the liaison to the finance committee, I anticipated that the board would probably do this. And so I asked for this to be put into the budget, that we would pass this and we would take it out if we did not pass it. Because this, of course, is not anything that's been passed by the board yet. This is a proposal. And it will be changed even today, hopefully, but then we will vote on it in the future, not this meeting. We're not going to vote on this budget, this meeting. We're giving all this information to you and give you a month to come talk to us about it if you have comments, and then we'll vote on it at the next meeting. So what we've done is we proposed in this budget the new higher rates with our higher income based on those higher rates. Okay, fitness expense. You'll see the top line is the employee contract labor, fitness class expense, all those. Everything is almost the same all the way down to the bottom line where it says personal training. Same darn things happen there as all those others. These young people coming in here and they're getting personal training, and we're going to make a little more money. And it's going to cost us more money first, though, because as they come in, they're going to pay a larger bill. We're going to pay that to the contractor, and then we're going to keep our slice, which is a little larger income. Next page. Merchandise revenue. Merchandise revenue is another one of those things like interest that was pretty much non-existent 3 years ago, 4 years ago, nothing. And now it's a nice little chunk. And most of you guys all have good looking t-shirts because of this. If you don't, please go get one. $60,000 last year, we're on budget, and we got budgeting $60,000 for next year. And you can see the expenses there. We do make a small profit on merchandise, plus we make you look better. Court sports. Court sports lesson revenue last year was $32,000, $39,000 this year. Everything else on that column is about the same till you get down to payroll and benefits. And as you know, payroll with employees everywhere in America seems to be going up a little bit. We went from 273 to 287. Nothing else much has changed. Next page. Social activities, we try to wash this out every year so that you get your money. We try to break even or get kind of close to it on this package every year. And we were at 112 last year. We're 112 next year. Food and beverage, we have 2 little pots of money for our restaurant. We are very thankful for the restaurant, and unlike almost any community, we are not trying to run that business ourselves and throwing away money. These guys doing a great job. We have a small pot of money to buy broken stuff in the restaurant. And that's where you see the $10,000. We're going to do that again for next year. Something breaks, we got to have something. We need a quick minor improvement that can't be capitalized. That'll be that $10,000. Then at the second line, you'll see food and beverage subsidy. That is the tiny fee, relatively speaking, that we pay to have such a great amenity there. It's a prediction. It's our best guess. It'll probably be kind of close. It's really looking like it's going to be really close to predicted, and we predicted the same for next year. 75,000. Yes, that works out to like less than $10 a house per month. All right, revenue. Comcast doesn't change much every year. We have a contract with them. They're going to get 4% more than the previous year every year. Nothing changes. Okay, the last page is about resale allocation. We get a lot of money from selling houses or buying houses back and forth. Some of you people move around a lot. $7,500 now. It's good. It's getting an expensive hobby for me. The number of resales was, we budgeted 65 for the whole year. At the end of September, we were already at 60. We know we're going to make it. We already have others being, the paperwork's in the office, so we can tell that's going to happen. Next year, we budgeted the same amount. We have no idea what the real estate market's going to do next year. We think that interest rates going down a little bit might help sales, might not. You'll see there, the board has this rule where we move the money around when a resale fee comes in. But what this board does is always tax the reserve account first, and then what's left over can go into the capital account to approve your amenities later. Down at the bottom, I'm not going to go over this a whole lot because you'll get glassy-eyed if you're not already there. But the replacement fund schedule, it shows you the reserve account. If this is interesting to you at all, please go study this. The reserve account is in good health. Sometimes, like right this moment, it looks like, whoa, there's not a whole lot of money in the reserve account. And there's a reason for that, is because recently, in the last few years, we went and bought all new stuff for the stuff in the reserve account, you know, things like the roof. And so all the big stuff that we anticipated spending money on before this year, I mean, after this year, we already have done it in advance. So we've done things earlier than we expected. So the reserve account is lower than I would like, but there's nothing really waiting to go broke. Everything's new, you know? And so for the next few years, the reserve account is projected to just keep getting more and more money in it. In fact, if you let your eyes scroll to the right on that year-end balance, at 2030, if everything goes according to plan, and it won't, there'll be $1.4 million sitting in there earning interest. And so we'll work on that later as time goes by, but don't worry about the fact that there's not a whole lot of money in there because everything is new around here. Capital fund schedule. Okay, remember I told you there's 3 accounts: operating account, we pay our bills out of. Your HOA fee goes into it. The reserve account, that's where things are going to be replaced later on. And now finally, the capital account. This is the account where we improve your amenities. The capital account gets almost all of its money from resale fees after the reserve account got its resale fees. First, they go there, and then whatever's left, we scrape the leftovers off into the capital account, then the board can make decisions. Here's the capital fund schedule. The capital fund, as you notice, there's pickleball courts being built out there. Those are being paid for out of the capital account. That's the biggie for 2024. But 2025, you'll notice that we don't have a whole lot of money at the year end. Okay, look at the year end of 2024. I'm ready to segue back to page 2. Look at the year end 2024, your bottom left-hand number. The capital account, which goes to improve the amenities, is going to be pretty much empty at the end of this year. Now, with the owners and the board's permission, I would like for us all to go back to page 2. Paul, with your assistance. And now I want to bring up something that as treasurer, I believe the board should address. Because the finance committee looks at things as in the past, and they do a wonderful job of it. But what I want the board to do is to ponder something about the future. Let's look at this line that says capital funding, $100,000. Now, last year, the line right below that says reserve funding, $50,000. And you'll see last year, we had a $50,000 funding for the reserve funding. What we knew last year was that the reserve account appeared, according to the reserve study we had in the past, and we just talked about that, it appeared to be fully funded. But we knew intellectually prices were going up on a lot of things. We were getting bids on stuff, and it was way higher than we would have gotten 4 years ago. So what the finance committee recommended and the board approved last year is we stuck an extra $50,000 out of your HOA fee into the reserve account. Just in case something costs more than it should have, there was an extra $50,000 sitting there. Now this year, we're working on the budget for next year, and the subject came up again. Now here's what happened at the finance committee, because as you know, I go to the finance committee meetings for the last 5 years because I'm the liaison, and they are very, very smart people, good cone heads, and they really know what they're talking about, and eventually they can get it down to my level. What they talked about was that what we should consider doing this year, rather than putting the money directly into the reserve account, is to offer the board flexibility. Once you put the money in the reserve account, it has to stay there. But if you put the money into the capital account, then later, if the reserve account needs money, the board just says, we're going to put the money in the reserve account. Boom, they move it, and it's there, and it's problem solved. And then at the same time, it gives the board the flexibility to use it for capital if the reserve account does not need an emergency. Now, what I would like for the board to consider, and I'm getting ready to raise a proposal, so do stay awake for me, guys, is that we have a problem that we know about, and we have intellectually kicked the can down the road, and I'm recommending that we don't continue to do that. We have the number one amenity at Pelican Marsh, according to the survey that we sent out to the members, what is the one amenity you're most likely to use? Which one have you used? And the one that is used more than any, by more people in Pelican Marsh than any other amenity is the gym. The gym, it gets used sometime during the year by more members than any other amenity. But for 20 years, the gym has been the same size it is now. It's been too small for several years. COVID gave us some relief because people got scared to go to the gym for a while. And so for a while, it wasn't as crowded as it was in 2019. In 2019, it was a mess. I'm one of the people who don't work out there much for several reasons. And one of them is you got to keep waiting for a machine. Now, recently, the reserve account, thank God for no money out of our pocket, bought all new machines. So the gym is now nicer than it used to be, still too darn small. The board has investigated expanding the gym in different ways. We have quotes from contractors, we have drawings from an architect, we have two different ideas that I think the board was probably going to ponder and maybe even mix them together or come up with a third idea. But we know we have a problem. Idea number one is going to cost us, we only got one contractor bid. I expect more bids and maybe a lower price, but it's going to be somewhere around $270,000. Idea number two, which could build on top of idea number one and give us more square footage, would be closer to, and it's hard to read his bid, but somewhere around 300,000 or 400,000. No matter what we choose to do, if it's more than 250,000, we will have to ask your permission. We're not going to go rogue and just start spending money. We have to ask your permission before we spend 250,000 or more. But there are two or more ways that we can expand the gym, make our gym better for our community. This is the weak link in our chain of amenities. And if we wait for resale fees to first pack the reserve account and then scrape the extra shavings off into the capital account and hope there's enough to do something there, I'm willing to bet my car, and I have a worse car than you, I'm willing to bet my car that it will not add up to much by the end of next year, because sales are not going to be 150 houses next year. It's probably going to be close to budget, 60 or 65. And that's not going to put hardly any money at all in the capital account. So we're going to be kicking the can down the road on our number one amenity for several more years. I am going to propose at the end of my blah, 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 is that what we do is that we change this number on the line that says capital account funding, that we change that number to 250,000. What this will do, we'll put 250,000 in the capital account that will allow us to put it in the reserve if we need it. And it will allow us to spend it on the gym if we can come to an agreement, and if we can get permission for you if it's more than 250,000. And we also know we have a parking lot problem that eventually is going to be addressed, but I think that's 2026. So the capital account needs money. If we were to do that, it would cost each home in Pelican Marsh $6.51 a month next year. $6.51 per home next month to change that number from 100 to 250. It would give the board enough money, that, especially combined with the resale fees, to do something about the gym size problem. We don't even have a place for the spin bikes. Did you guys know that? After we built the restaurant, we gave the spin bike room to the restaurant for a kitchen. So now the spin bikes are being moved around, and then they pull them all out and they have their class and they shove them back against the wall. There's not a spin bike room anymore. They're part of Suite C, and they should be part of the gym. And so these things need to be addressed. When you go into the gym, there's personal trainers. I like to use the free weights. I'm teaching my kid how to use the free weights, and I have to step over people because sometimes it's wall-to-wall people where the free weights are. We need more square footage, and when they're not using the spin bikes, they always put them back against the wall, and there's a lot of space there. So the board needs to rehash these ideas, come up with their favorite one, vote on it, but it's going to cost money. And I think it's kind of fooling ourselves to pretend like it doesn't cost money, and it's kicking ourselves in the butt to say, if we vote on something, now we're going to ask for an assessment. I think we should just go ahead and change this to 150. I have a couple little notes and I'm going to shut up.
250?
I'm going to change, I'm going to propose we change it to 250 instead of 100. And raise it by 150, which would cost $78 a year per house, which is $651 a month. That that would take care of the crowding. We would have the ability to take care of our problem.
250.
If we change it to 250. Now what she's going to do now is to type in 250 into that line, and you'll see at the top what happens with your HOA fee.
Keep mentioning space.
Yes, we have more people using the gym than we used to, which takes space.
Maximum.
We, okay, the good question. Okay, so for the people at home that cannot hear, audience members, someone said, can we do anything else with space because we're maximized with the parking? To answer that question, no, we are not maximized with the parking. We have permission from the county to do something without adding more parking spots, because we had a parking study that the county agreed that we can do a little bit more without adding parking spots. So
Yeah, specific, I think we have
Yes.
approval for up to 1,000 square feet.
we can add 1,000 square feet without adding more parking spots. And then number two, we have a proposal and even a design from an architect for adding to the size of the gym without adding to the exterior walls, which means adding no extra square feet, but moving walls around inside and utilizing space better than it was. But unfortunately, moving walls around costs money. And one of these is load-bearing walls, costs a lot of money. But we can move walls around inside, make our gym bigger without adding any on the outside. So we have both of those options available. That's very sharp of you, Jerry. Yes, so we can add space outdoors. We can make that gym a little bigger, or we could add space indoors, or we could do both.
And then
But it would cost a lot of money. Go ahead, my friend.
additionally, as we have our long-term planning meeting later this fall, one of the things we're contemplating is adding the ability to add parking across the street. We've sketched out with engineer, I think up to 18 parking spots that possibly could be used for employees across the street. So that would all tie in.
CBD space.
Yes. And that would cost, well, or
Technically golf course, but.
golf course. But that would cost money. Do we have a guesstimate, just a off the cuff guesstimate what that would cost?
In the neighborhood of 225 to 250,000.
So even if we were fortunate, because just for those of you who have not stayed in this story, is that the county does not allow you to add space to a building without adding parking spots. We're out of parking spots, except for these few that the county has let us add. So if we were to get permission from the golf course and the community and the board to do something, that costs money also. This is another reason why I believe the capital fund should have a little more money. I like it that our HOA fees are very low. I fight every month for our HOA fees to stay low. But what I'm saying here is that sometimes there's an investment side and you need to put a little more money in than what you're used to. I recognize some people don't like the idea of investing into the future, but we have a lot of young people who are using this gym and using this facility at a very high rate. And the gym's a weak spot, but I would like to let the board have that power. So I hereby move that the board raise the amount from 100,000 to 250,000 to the capital account for the budget of 2025.
Before
Yes.
we make a motion,
Yes.
can we get in comments from the
Oh,
board?
yeah, what most people, I think the normal procedure is someone would second the motion and then the board talks about it for a while, then the owners talk about it for a while, and then maybe the board will
But
vote
is it
on it.
really something to motion, or is it just part of the budget to be approved on for next November? Yeah.
I think it's just discussion.
I guess you could just say, let's do it, and because we're gonna vote on this budget 1 month from now.
Right.
So we don't even have to actually vote on it. We just have to agree to change this budget. And then 1 month from now, we may change it back if you get some reason for
If we
that.
get feedback. then-
Yeah. Paul, also, I've noticed there's questions online earlier. Do we have, are any of them related to these subjects? Go ahead, Joe.
I wonder if we should have some board discussion and then go to the online questions.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Good idea.
Before we make a decision. wanna
So
get
I
input.
have a couple of comments on what you posed, and I want to get back to something you said earlier on revenue, that a lot of the revenue increases from the gym, from personal training and so on. I think clearly the revenue increase reflects that there's activity there. If we were a private business, we would probably be looking at saying, where do we have growth? Where do we have activity? Well, the gym is a place where we have growth and activity, and we're getting squeezed physically. So If we were looking at this from a private business perspective and we wanted to grow our revenue further, we would probably have to invest into the asset in order to grow the asset. And I kind of just want to make that point because it ties into your earlier point. Your point between putting more money towards expanding the gym ties into, in my mind, ties into the revenue growth that we've seen from the gym.
Good point.
If I boil down what you've been saying about the capital allocation for the gym and what it does to HOA fees, when this paper, the way this paper looked 15 minutes ago, we were looking at a 5.5% increase, 5.9% increase in fees from, and if we were to do this additional increase, that's a 9.9% increase.
But it's a 1 year only.
It's a 1 year.
The extra, everything above 5.9 is a 1 year only investment. And I would like to also mention that the first point you made about the extra income, for those of you who are not gym rats, the people who are personal trainers and that's extra income, they're in the gym training people. When you go to the gym to work out, very often there might be 3 people training their 3 customers. So now you have these 6 people working in that same square footage that you're trying to work out in. And it wouldn't surprise me if we could get more trainers and bring us more income, but we need somewhere for them to work out. So the more income we get from these trainers, the more tight our gym is. That's what I'm trying to say. Our gym is actually getting smaller when we get more trainers.
To clarify, Nathaniel, 250,000 would just be a starting point for any investment we make into the gym.
Good point. We're going to have resale fees. I'm hoping for some resale fees to help bolster it. And one of these gym expansions, I believe, can be done for 250 or less. We already have a bid for about 268, and we only asked one contractor. So I believe that we might be able to do a gym expansion only with this 250. I would be open to a tiny bit more if that's where the board's leaning, but I believe 250 would give us a chance to have this taken care of in 2025, not 2026 or 7.
My feeling is that it would be a good idea to start out the way you're suggesting, to create some more budget room to deal with the gym. We haven't yet talked about how to deal with the gym and what to do exactly. There's different options, the different things we could do with the gym. We could go and expand an extra 1,000 square feet outside. We could do some changes inside the building. A lot more discussion has to happen.
Yes.
I think what you're really proposing is that we start making some room in the budget in anticipation of something we may want to do next year.
I think we know we need to do something. I mean, the problem is evident. So I feel like the board can see we need to do something, and no matter which of the choices, whether it's one of the 2 or 3 choices we know about or one we haven't found, it's going to cost money. So I think we might as well put the money there to at least help us get started. That's what I'm proposing.
I've got some comments, Nathaniel. Number one, to me, this is the first time I've heard anything about this. We have a long-range planning session scheduled for November and December. I think this is where this discussion belongs. I don't believe the finance committee and the preparation or review of this budget, that was a consideration. I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't think it's the time to be now proposing a fairly large addition to a budget for one section of the population of this community. You have a lot of people that use the gym. You have a lot of people that use other facilities. You got a lot of people that don't use anything. So I, at this point, can't support increasing this budget at this point without going through a planning process. And you do have the flexibility, if you have the monies, to move them between 3 accounts. That's in the bylaws. So I just frankly think you got the cart in front of the horse.
I'd like to answer that. That's good. Thank you for your comments, Jim. The reason I believe this should be done with the budget is because this is where we ask the community for their HOA fees. And when we ask them to invest, this is where we would do it. This should be on the budget. It was noted that maybe we haven't done our homework on this one. We have. Paul can verify that for something like 3 years, we've been working on this. We've been getting bids. We got architect drawings. We have asked the committee that works with the fitness. We've also Patrick, who works in fitness. Everyone has given us their input. So now the board is going to receive a lot of information and be able to make their choices. If we don't do it with the budget, then we're going to miss our opportunity to have the money available. It's true we can move the money from one account to another, but only if we have the money. We won't have the money if we don't put it in the budget.
Well, you got another option. You can go out and if it's so important to the community, you can go out and get a loan to do that and pay it back through the revenues that come in.
That's a good point, but if you go get a loan, then that means you got to pay interest on the loan. I don't see any point in paying interest on a loan for an expense that we know we have to have. We know we need to fix the gym problem. We know it's going to cost us money. Why go paying interest? That's my point.
Well, I will tell you, you got 1,917 homes here, and I don't think all of those homes would agree with you.
You cannot get all those homes to agree on anything. They won't even agree on a presidential candidate.
They don't know anything about what you just discussed.
The
If I
number
went
one
out here
amendment is
and
the
asked
gym.
people, do you know all these plans have evolved? I've been on this board almost, several months now. First time it came up. All we ever said was, we're gonna have a long-range planning session and review all these things. I do not think the timing is correct on this, therefore I will not support it.
I'd like to point out, we've had a long-range planning committee and talking for years now, and also on our surveys, the gym and the relevance of the gym and the upgrading of the gym has always been at the top of the list. But thank you for your input. I do strongly respect, and I don't want anybody to think that I dislike Jim Carter. He's one of my favorite people in the world, but him and I are seeing this a little differently, but we both have good points here.
Nathaniel, you and I have been addressing the issues with the fitness center for a long period of time.
Yes, sir.
And I think with COVID, we sort of tabled it for a period of time just because it wasn't the right time, whatever. And I'm glad that you're addressing it now because I just took a peek back here and I found the set of plans that we discussed, which was A, the expansion of the building, B, the reconfiguration of the building that we all walked through. And I think it's very imperative that as we want to stay the best in all of Naples, this is something that needs to be done.
I wonder if in terms of process, what we're trying to do today, if I understand it correctly, is put a draft out to the community for review, nothing more. So the question for us is, what is the draft that we want to put out to the community today? Is that the correct question?
Well, the whole budget is our draft to the community. And this meeting, as well as the video of it and the recorded video of it is our draft. So for the next month, the community will be giving you their input on what they think of this. A month from now, we should be voting on this. Essentially a month. Paul, is that correct? Essentially a month from now, we'll be voting on this. So right now, we're proposing the whole budget. I'm proposing that we make this budget something a little more realistic for 2025.
Okay, we've heard from Jim, we've heard from Nathaniel, we've heard from Matt. Brian?
I've also been participating in the finance committee meetings and the budget review. And during those discussions, I think there was a comfort level around $100,000 being within our budget to start that building of a capital fund for whether it be a gym expansion or whether it be wherever the long-term planning later this year would recommend. And as you know, I've been very involved in trying to get parking lot expansion as well. At this point, I'm not comfortable going from 100 to 250. And I feel as if it kind of jumps the gun a little bit in terms of assuming that we're definitely going to do something as opposed to building a savings for something that might be recommended in the future. I just feel it's a little bit aggressive at this point. I am supportive of the 100,000 that we discussed in the finance committee. I think 250 is a little aggressive. That's the way I feel.
George?
Yeah, this is a tough one. I agree with Jim in that we should consider the fact that we do have a long-term planning session coming up, and that putting this just ahead of that might be short-sighted. I I mean, Nathaniel, what are the what would the problem be in delaying this? You know, what would be our next opportunity?
Good question. Okay, the reason that this is, good question. The reason that this is important to do now, to give us, we're not actually doing anything. We're just giving ourselves the bullets in the gun to do something later for whatever we choose. If you don't add it to the budget, you won't have the money in 2025. So you can have your long-term planning and say, let's go in 2025 and do that. And then when you decide to go do it, you don't have the money. You can't do it without an assessment. Try to do an assessment and you'll have an explosion.
So it would delay any work being done.
Yeah, nothing will happen until you get the money, and you can't get the money after the budget without an assessment. Now, I'd also mention, to Brian's point, that the finance committee put in the number of 100,000 for a number, but the finance committee is not the board. They're not aware of the needs of the community. They have no idea what's going on in the gym. It has nothing to do with any particular project. They know that they believe that we need more money in our accounts. But if we do something with the gym, we're going to take money out of our accounts. And so the finance committee has a strong point that we should put some money in our accounts, but they're not talking about the gym needs expansion. They've never mentioned that, they have no idea that how bad our gym situation is, or that the board has proposed for several years to work on the gym, and we've even hired an architect to give us the plan. We've already drawn up the plans, and we've already even started getting bids in a previous board, and then that got halted when we had to stop. But we have a lot of data. The problem has been existent for a long time, and it would have been worse if it hadn't been COVID. COVID gave us a relief for a while. People were going. In 2019, it was a mess in the gym. It should start up being a mess again this year. So I strongly recommend not waiting a long time, because this is your last chance to get the money without a bloody fight. People don't mind writing a check for their HOA fee when it's $70 more than what it could have been proposed, but you send them a bill in the mail for $100 or something. And as we did about 3 years ago, and there was an explosion, we withdrew that idea. So I recommend that you ask for the money in the easy way at a timely time. This is the timely way to do it.
George? Any further comments?
No other purpose.
Yeah, I have more comments. I think there's a couple of interesting points you make. If we're going to go out and put a draft budget out to the community, I think it should be the larger budget, and have the community respond to that. And if the community response says, no, we really don't think that's the right way to go, then deal with that in 30 days. When we do the vote, we can take it down. I think it's more difficult to go out with a smaller budget to the community and then get to a meeting in 30 days from now and suddenly up the number the last second. I think that would be unhealthy. I like the point that Jim was making about we could borrow the money. I don't think it's the only option for raising money for a capital expenditure. If we had the discussion about how, when, and what to do with the gym over the next few months, we do have the option to go borrow money, and I don't think we should be afraid of doing that necessarily. I don't see anything wrong with borrowing money if that's what we need to do on an interim basis to finance a project. So I think actually Jim makes a really good comment there. So I don't think, even if you do go out and the community says, this larger budget is not acceptable, we think a 10% increase is too big, which I could see people having as a response, then we go back down to the 5.5% budget that you proposed, leaving the option open that once we do discuss an expansion, we still have to go out to the community. Like you said, we still have to ask for the excess of 250 expenditure authorization. And if we then do need the capital and we didn't get it out of the budget, then we do what Jim suggested and we go and finance it. That would be my approach. But tactically, in terms of going out to the community, I think it's better to go with a big number first and have that pushed back, as opposed to going with a small number and suddenly last minute trying to up the number at a meeting in a month from now. I think that would be unpalatable to me.
So I'm sort of the last person on the board. I don't have any personal skin in the game because I've been to the gym. I've looked at the gym, and the gym's awesome and it's active, and I've watched every single month us increase the revenue, increase the numbers and everything else. Personally, I need to be in the gym, but I haven't been in the gym. So this is not about me, it's about the community. And the feedback that I've been listening to over the course of the last, 6 months is thank you so much for adding to the gym, and there's more and more people, the younger people coming in and everything else. So I know I'm sort of hearing this also for the first time, because it's not something, again, that I have a personal interest in. But listening to everybody, I'm in favor of, increasing the budget now. If we get substantial pushback and everything else, we can always dial it back. But I would be in favor of moving forward with this. So those are my comments. Mark?
People online can't hear you.
What's that?
The people online can't hear you. If you
Come up to the mic.
Can you come up here? There is quite a few people online listening.
We put a very nice chair there for you, Mark.
May need it. All I want to know is, how is the community going to be informed about this budget? Is this just going to be posted on the website? Is it going to be sent out to everyone? Because if you're waiting to hear pushback from somebody, they have to be informed.
Well, we had this meeting today, which for the community, and we're gonna do it again next month, and we're gonna post it online.
Okay.
And
that's-
Paul sent out a message to everybody that we're having this meeting about the budget.
Right, but you can see, you have.
Not everybody's here.
1,800 doors that aren't here. So that's what I'm saying. If you're waiting for pushback, you have to give them something to push back against.
Would there be
I
something?
know this is only a small sampling, doesn't represent the 1,900 and some homes, but what I'd like to hear from the people in this room, at least, you've heard from the board, we're sort of mixed. I'd like to hear positives, negatives, what your thoughts are on this idea.
Just a couple quick comments. Commend you all on the work you do on all this. But on that particular page, if you go to the top right outside of the box, you got a 10% increase. I don't recall ever experiencing a year-over-year 10% increase. I think you ought to see if that's happened. Because even though it may be a one-timer, it's an increase. And more importantly, if you go to the top number, it's an 18.6% increase in the annual operating budget, excluding the Comcast expenses. Some people may have their antennas go up on that.
We've had assessments, and since Pelican Marsh has existed. This one, we have had assessments. And so, when you have an assessment and an HOA fee and you add them together, that's an increase for 1 year only. And this essentially would be like, your HOA fee would have a one-time only assessment in it. And I would like to remind everybody that we still don't have a spin bike room. They have spin bike classes several times a week, but there's no room for them. And so not only is the gym too small, but there's nowhere for the spin bikes.
Nathaniel, I don't disagree at all at the need for gym expansion and to find a home for the spin bikes. Even expanding on that thought further, where we have the spin bikes actually destroys other assets that we have, moving them all over the carpeting and people exercising on the carpeting isn't what this space was meant to be used for. So I'm wholeheartedly in agreement. I'm just struggling with this mechanism.
Would you agree that it would be a good idea for the board to have the ability to do the improvements, but then but the board has the option, because the board hasn't done anything. This does not require an option to be made. This puts a bullet in your gun, but we could use the money for something else. Has to be done in public, has to ask permission from the community if it's more than 250,000. But even if the low hanging fruit is obviously the gym and the spin room. But the board could decide like that something else need to be done, but I really believe that we should focus on what is the worst thing. I'm sorry, thank you. Good point.
Yes.
You guys have been talking about money. Okay, I talk about business. You want to go ahead and expand. You want to accommodate new people coming in. You want to accommodate young people coming in. First of all, what are you going to do about the parking? The parking should be the first issue that you resolve. You got 2 more pickleball courts going to be in action this year. If you think last year was busy in the parking lots, you're going to increase 1/3 of the use of pickleball alone. So you're waiting to get an approval to get additional parking across the street. If you don't get that, and you expand the ability to have more people in the exercise room, what are you doing overall? Okay, it's just an accommodation of how you're gonna function the facility. All right, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. I go and get those parking lots that, okay, put right down, then you can go ahead and get whatever expansion you want. If you want to do the larger one, don't piecemeal it. Okay, you say you want to do one in, one out. What are you gonna do over a couple of 3 years? All that does is cost more money, and nothing is going down, guys. I just came off of a board realizing, okay, what's happened here to 2 contractors that hired us to see what the effect of the hurricane up in North Carolina is. It's impacting the country. Okay, I hope nobody needs windows right away or copper. Okay, you're in trouble.
So I'm trying to understand, are you for or against us adding to the budget?
I'm not, you guys got a great habit here of spending money because we have it. It's easy to come by. I'm saying, think about what it does to the whole process here. Put it in, okay, you want to put it in for 100, 250 isn't the whole point. How about substantiating how that money is going to get used when? Why do you want to expand it, put another, 20 cars out there in a 2-hour frame where you don't have it? You got more people coming in, okay, off the pickleball that's been expanded, and nobody's addressing that. You got a great propensity because we have money coming in all the time. What's the deductible on the new insurance policy if we ever had the claim on the insurance on a hurricane?
The new policy won't kick in to January 1, and we have not seen it yet, but it'll go back to what the old one was. What was the old policy? 5,000, 5%. It was the same thing as what we had 1 year ago.
5% of what?
Well, and let's not mix insurance discussion with the topic.
Yeah. It's just money that has to be expended at one point in time, but I would go ahead, okay, and take a look at the whole project. It's a great idea. Okay, it's gonna benefit the community if it's done in the right sequence. It doesn't make sense.
Jerry's bringing up a good point. If you look at the very bottom line of the whole budget, look at the very bottom line of the whole budget, it shows you how much we're proposing will be in the, scroll all the way to the bottom. Okay, very at the bottom is saying at 2024, the very bottom line, we're gonna have 63,000 in the capital account. In 2025, at the very end of the year, 354,000. So like Jerry says, if we decide to do a couple things like expand the parking lot for 300,000, expand the gym for 300,000, you can't do it in 2025. You're gonna have to do it. You're gonna have to do it after the end of 2026 or 2027. There's no money. So look there, at the end of 2025, December 31, 25, we'll have 354. That's not enough to do much with. So if you wanted to expand a parking lot and expand the gym, 600, 700,000, you're going to have to wait till 2026, 2027.
Look at other financial.
I think you just made my decision because it's my birthday today, by the way.
Happy
62, thank you.
Congratulations.
And I'm remodeling my house. And the reason why I am, because I don't know if I'm going to be here till 63, 64, and 65. So I want to enjoy my house. I want to enjoy Pelican Marsh. I want to enjoy the amenities. So I may not be here in.
Well, how do you
3
think I
years.
feel? I've been here from day one. You guys are talking about young people coming in. I don't care about young people coming in. Excuse me.
Amen.
No, okay, but I've been paying the freight for 25 years so they can walk into the best community in the area.
Jerry,
And I funded it.
I've been here for 21 years and I funded it until 4 years ago. And I didn't use anything.
It's not a question of, I don't use much of it myself, but I just find out it's a whole package. Okay, it's a whole package. And you're gonna increase revenue. Let me tell you something, it'll take 20 years to pay off the debt for the expansion with the money that you get off with the contractor's kickback. That's a joke. Okay. All right,
Well, I think we've had a lot of good dialogue here. One thing I like about this board and the community is that nobody feels like they can't speak up. And Jerry, thanks for coming to every meeting. I know you'll always speak up, but sure.
Just a quick thought, which is,
We're thinking currently of the revenue model as I call it flat tax. Another thing maybe for the long range planning to think about is if people want to use the gym in the busiest of hours, perhaps there's a membership fee for those people who want to use it that raises revenue. Not sure if that fits with the overall of the community, but just something to think about.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the residents?
Oh, hold on, you're next.
There's a lot of homes in Pelican Marsh right now that are coming up. I own property in two neighborhoods. I see a lot of places that are gonna go for, that are for sale. Families coming in, whatnot. I look at a gym, having played sports my whole life and being one of the, sorry, Jerry, I'm one of the youngest people in the community. No offense, I'm also a Red Sox fan, and I hope the Yankees lose. But the bottom line is, whether or not you play tennis, pickleball, golf, the one thing that most people that are coming in under the age of, say, 60 to draw a line, most everybody has gone to a gym. And I think to introduce yourself to a community, a gym is a great place. It's a positive place to meet people and make friends. I know a lot of people that I play tennis with who are neighbors that wouldn't know each other if it weren't for the gym. One big thing about a gym, and we've added a whole bunch of equipment that has been awesome. Peloton's used as a perfect example. There's degradation on that machinery. No matter what you say, there are some pieces of equipment that are gonna last forever, and there are other pieces that are gonna last for less than 5 years. I use the Peloton as an example because they probably will last less than 5 years. And that's a great thing if we're all using it. Any community that I've gone to, one of the pieces I've always looked at was the gym, because it is a centerpiece of bringing people together. To take the 250 and add it to the budget, I agree. If you have the money there, because you won't have it in years. What we haven't talked about is the degradations. Equipment is expensive. You could run up a bill with 50 to 100,000 quick.
We do have that in the reserve schedule going out, Chris.
And I get it, but you could
Even the
have,
new equipment we have replacing in 5 years.
thank you. But the issue here is to have it means that you folks on the board have to commit to making the improvement. I agree in getting the money, totally agree in it, because we do have new people that are gonna come in. I also agree in constantly improving this. But I see a gym versus any other amenity as a great centerpiece for new introductions of folks, getting them involved in the community and being a great thing. If we did improve the gym and improve the footprint and made some commitment, which you have to make a commitment as a board, I would think it'd be a wonderful thing that we would be able to add as an additional improvement to an amenity here. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Chris.
Hi, Paige Genetti Egritz. You might recall from the 2020 long-range plan that the fitness center was pretty high up there on the list of priorities. And I did ask about it for a couple years in a row, but I understand that needs change. Having said that, from a competitive standpoint, like the previous person said, our fitness centers does not make a great appearance space-wise relative to other fitness centers that I've seen. Now, if I think about the process, I would say, hey, the long-range plan comes first, then the operational strategies, then the operational initiatives, and then the budget for those. Now, also having said that, that's a long process. I would be more supportive of putting the money in now with the commitment of identifying what the current needs are in the community and say that that money is going to be spent towards needs. We haven't updated the needs in quite a while. Like Brian said, and like others have said, there's multiple needs out there. So I don't think we should jump into putting the money, committing to putting the money against in fitness center improvements, even though I am very supportive of that. I think it needs to be dealt with in a long-range plan-driven approach. And what are the priorities of the community?
So would you, before you go, would you say that we should have the higher budget or leave it and come back later? Or would you say put it in and then we still have to make a decision on where we're going to spend the
I
money
would
as a board?
personally put the money in with the commitment that we're going to identify the most important needs of the community. And then we're going to look to use that money against that.
I like that.
I like that as well.
But Paige, please don't go yet. We have a lot of new board members that don't know who you are. This here is a superstar and people think that we didn't have a long-term budget. We didn't have a long-term plan. We didn't have a long-term idea. Paige Giannetti led the task force to put together a long-term plan. And it's a book. And they studied all the different needs of the community and different ideas. And this was in the long-term plan, and it's not like it's just out of thin air. 2020, was it?
Yeah, it was twenty
It was
twenty.
in 2020. In 2020, she brought this up as one of the needs of the community.
From the
and
survey.
On the survey back in 2020. So here we are 4 years later, and nothing has changed except that the reserve account bought new equipment, as it will every 5 years. But this is not like that. This is some straw that just fell out of the tree. This is something that's been worked on before, studied before, and it has been a need before 4 years ago. And she had a 9-person committee that studied this for months. And this is one of the top items on the list.
I would just say that, hey, needs change. We all know that needs change, so we need to reassess the current needs. And there's likely multiple of them.
That's a good point. And we're going to have a meeting to assess those other needs in a month or two.
Yeah.
And the board would have the option to go whichever direction they wanted to.
Yeah, I think,
Any other comments from residents? And Paul, anybody on the?
Yeah, you got you online.
You had to.
That's not enough.
The Melzon asked what the homeowners fee be in January, the split between the Thought Marsh and Comcast. Well, it all depends on which way the board goes today. But
Right on
if-
that first page, Paul.
yeah, so if the board were to vote to increase it to 250 for the capital funding, then the operating assessment will be 1,000 and the cable assessment would be 1,214. If the board left it at 100,000 for capital, then the operational assessment would be 921 and cable still be 1,214.
So it'd be $79.
So I don't think that's what everybody understands is the biggest piece of this 2,000 some dollars is cable.
Comcast.
And internet.
Wasn't a place made for the spin bike rooms outside the, wasn't a place made for the spin bikes outside with a roof and AC system? No. Currently the bikes are outside, but they're sharing the space when we need that area for other events and activities and card playing and whatever else. And so, as Nathaniel was mentioning before, throughout the season, we're constantly moving those bikes back and forth and, different places just to find room. And the goal long-term is to put the spin bikes where they belong over in fitness in a dedicated room for spin bikes. Oh, Dave's got a long one here. There's also a current space shortage for activities, cards and games, et cetera, in the afternoons, including when the association annual meetings are held, which cuts off a full afternoon of playing time for activities, even with additional space for activities created by covering the pergola. Is there any way that a second level or other location could be created to house admin offices? So the current space could be used for more activities. We have previously been told that a complete add of a second floor is not structurally possible. The long-range plan should be clearly addressed this shortfall.
That's correct.
It would take a huge amount of parking spots. It's just not.
And structurally, this building was retroed or engineered a little bit lighter than the original plans. So there is no ability without a hell of a lot of structural steel.
However, if you were looking to do an expansion of the gym, one of the things I would recommend in a long-term planning discussion is to make that expansion a 2-story expansion, or at least have the capabilities to do a second story of whatever that expansion would be.
Yeah,
Paul, when is
parking
our
ratio-
long-term meeting?
Parking ratio wise, we would need, 4.5 for every 1,000 square feet we expand.
Paul, when is our long-term meeting? The board is scheduled to have this long-term discussion meeting this year. Have we scheduled that yet?
It's not scheduled yet. The goal is to have it sometime in November, December timeframe. So the board needs to
Okay.
get together.
I'm supportive of
My
Paige's idea.
recommendation would be between Thanksgiving and Christmas, sometimes the beginning of December.
For the record, I'm supportive of Paige's idea that we have the long-term planning meeting, and Dave Wallace also seems to be saying the same thing. We have the long-term planning meeting, and the board can then direct which direction they want to go if some other item seems to be more important than the gym.
So you're basically saying.
And the last question on
We
mine,
basically are not earmarking that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to go to the gym because we're still going to have a meeting next month to decide what is our highest use of our funds. And if there's something that's even more urgent than that, the board can do that, and I would support that.
So the increase in the HOA basically saying we need to rebuild our capital
We need to rebuild the capital account
account.
to improve amenities.
And among the things we're thinking of is expansion of the gym, which has long been necessary, storage reasons, et cetera, but not necessarily.
So
Yes,
Joe, I would suggest maybe just taking a straw poll among the 7 of us with 3 options. 0, 100,000, 250,000, in terms of what the board as a whole feels comfortable putting forth to the community for the next month for review, and just go with that.
I think you're
well said.
Anybody else before we do that?
Yeah, I want to make a couple more comments because I think we're getting to a really big point, a discussion we want to have with the community. And I agree with Mark that the more communication we have with the community on this, the better. The way I see this community is bursting at the seams in terms of the services that people are expecting of the community. And it will cost money. This isn't the only item that's on the list. And you see other residents commenting on this, whether it's cards, whether it's I think we have this discussion that's coming up in November, December is a critical discussion. We already know we're bursting at the seams. We've done a long-term plan before. I was actually lucky enough to work a little bit on Paige's work back in 2020. It identified a number of things that haven't gotten done. And it doesn't get done because we don't have the budget. We don't have the community approval. I think it behooves us as a board to take that very seriously and go to the community now in this next round to make that bigger push and say to the community, what do you want to do? The need is clearly there. And I think as we explore that, we're going to see even more responses from the community as to the need, but it will also cost money. I don't think there's anything wrong with starting to prepare for that by starting to say, let's put more money aside. Some of the preparation was done by increasing the property transfer fee, which I think was a great move. The reality is this community is 25, 30 years old. We're competing with new communities that have bigger, better facilities. And it's a challenge for us. We're going to have to think about as a community, how are we going to deal with competing with communities that have bigger, better facilities? Because we want to attract people to this community. It affects real estate value in this community. These are expenditures, they're expensive, but they will also reflect back on the desirability of people coming into the community and what people are willing to pay for houses in the community. So these are big decisions for the community to make. My feeling is always push a little bit bigger, but make sure we communicate with the community. So maybe one thing we could do is go with, my recommendation would be to go with the 250, but also maybe make sure that we make an extra effort to getting it out to everybody, making maybe an extra mailing or something like that, like Mark suggested, to make sure that we get people interested and that we also get people interested in this consultation that we want to have over the next couple of months in November, December. I want participation from the community in this. I want a chance for us to talk to the community about the need, but I also want the feedback from the community, and I want to have a chance to explain to the community why it's important that we start moving on some of these things, not just making another 5-year plan. Like Paige said, we've made one and we didn't really act on all those items. We need to start moving on these decisions on how to move forward with the community and how we're going to fund it. So let's push a little bit bigger. Let's go with the 250, do the extra communication to the community, and then see what the response is.
Okay. Thank you, Uwe. I think we're in a position that we can go ahead and, yep, Jim.
I don't think the community has any awareness of what we were discussing today about going from originally, it's about 2,135 was adjusted as I came into this meeting. Now, if you go 250, what does that do to the annual assessment?
You have that number right.
It's $79. It adds $79 a year, just for 1 year only, to the assessment. So that's $79 per household.
Yeah, and I got a bridge for sale in Brooklyn too.
I got a
I don't-
calculator, that's what
I
it
don't
says.
believe these kinds of things hold. I think you're getting close to like $300 increase for this community. And it's not just this foundation. Every individual homeowners association is going through these discussions and everybody's gonna get an increase. So I understand the need. And I understand through long-range planning process, I think it takes that discussion. If was 100,000 in here in this year's budget, we had already planned to add 100,000. Yes or no?
No, the board has not had any plans.
No,
We have sunshine laws in Florida. This is the
No, this
first
is
time
first
we've talked
first
about
time we're
it.
discussing this.
I know
the
sunshine
finance
laws more
committee
than
had
you ever
originally
will, my friend.
Send 100,000 on.
100,000, there should be a number for that. I don't like the way that it was done today. I'll be very candid about that. I would have liked, and the community doesn't know, and I agree with you. If this community knew, everybody out there today knew what we were talking about here today, this room would be full. But they don't know. They expect Foundations is having their annual budget review. We'll probably get $50 or $60 or $100 increase. It's gonna be business as usual. And that's not what's happening here today.
But Jim, we have a whole nother month and we have a whole nother meeting. We're
And
not
how are
voting,
we
we're
gonna
not,
get-
we're not voting on anything today.
Well, I
All we're doing
understand.
is saying, what do we want the draft proposed budget to look like?
Right. All right, but that's, I feel very strongly that if we don't get the people in here next month, if they don't understand, then, that's what it is. But I don't like the idea that we're doing this. Whatever this board decides, I could go off 100,000 and make some sense of what you want to put in here. But this kind of information should have been thought about before we got down to the end. But
Raise the resale fee $2,000, there's $130,000 for this year, you saw the problem.
For people at home that couldn't hear, the most recent comment was that if we raise the resale fee, it would also bring in more income. Of course, that takes a few months, but that might be an idea to consider in the future.
You need to vote, that, you can vote on that as a board, that's a board decision.
Right, the board would vote on it.
Community doesn't.
Go
have to
ahead, Paige.
A couple things, page Janetta Egrets again. Before we increase the new homeowner fee, I would just want to do a competitive analysis with other communities again, because we have increased it quite a bit since 2020.
The resale fee?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the name.
Good point.
And then secondly, I would go back to Uwe's point, which was when we did the 2020 long-range plan, we talked about the mission and the vision. And I know all that wasn't, I'll say, finalized completely, but it was about maximizing the quality of life and consistently outperforming an increase in property value versus our competition. So quality of life and property values was what it's about. And that's part of why we need to think about what money do we need to bring into the facilities and how we maintain a competitive advantage.
Thank you, Paige.
Thank you.
And just to defend the prior board a little bit, from that study, I think food and beverage was the top recommendation coming from that study, which has been delivered, pickleball expansion, improve our gym equipment. So it's important to note that a lot of things were done as a result of that study.
Yeah, Paige, don't ever think that nothing happened because you nudged us the right direction. Yes,
Byron, you're absolutely right.
quality of
The
life.
major decision was the restaurant operations. And that's where the focus was. And that was a big decision for this community.
Okay, I think we've had enough discussion. Let's go ahead. Well, first of all, Brian, you want to run this because I think your idea was
I was
good.
just recommending a straw poll among the seven of us,
Yep.
just saying, look, one option is don't do anything from a capital reserve funding perspective. One option is do 100,000, one option is do 250, and wherever the board decides as a whole would be put
That we-
forward to the community.
Okay,
So,
all right, so straw poll.
so who would like that we should have zero in the capital funding in the initial budget going to community? Anybody?
Anyone?
Okay, who feels as if we should have 100,000 going in that initial budget? Two individuals, and who feels we should have 250 in that
250?
initial? Okay,
Okay, so I think we've got our answer. We don't really need this is really just for the draft board.
no,
All
this
of
is,
it's in
we're
motion.
just working through the budget, that's all. we're
That's
doing.
all we're doing is working through the budget.
To answer the last question that Mel's on, 79 times, well, we have 1,914 doors. But we already had 150 in the proposed budget for today. So we're
100,
adding-
we had 100,
we had
we're adding
100.
150.
So we're adding another 150, which equals 250.
Yes, the extra 150 that we're proposing at this time is the
So the 150,
$79 per door.
yeah, added to the 100 already in there, it's
Yes.
250.
There's a lot of different increases in the budget, and that 100 was one of them.
Well, I just want to say thank you, everybody, for your comments with respect to the proposed budget. I think this was very, very good and collaborative, and appreciate everybody's comments. Any other board comments? Any other resident comments? Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So motion.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.